Hey guys, it's Coaster Confusion here. Today I'm going to discuss a question that I'm often asked by the general public. Which type of restraint is safest on roller coasters, especially the ones that go upside down? Us coaster enthusiasts know what two restraints there are, over the shoulder and lap bars. Let's get into the discussion. Which restraint is safer, the one that comes over you, or the one that sits on your leg? An over-the-shoulder restraint or harness, often abbreviated to OSTR, is a U-shaped restraint that comes down from behind the rider's head and keeps the rider secure at their lower torso. This type of restraint is usually found on coasters that contain vertical loops or other upside-down elements. The reason why most of the general public feel that this restraint is safer is because it seems to cover most of the rider's body, but that isn't really the case. A lap bar is a type of restraint that sits at the rider's lap. It is usually installed at the bottom of the train and is pulled down with the rider's legs in between, with a bar that sits on the rider's lap. Other kinds of lap bars include T-bars, where a bar goes between the rider's legs with a T-shape, and buzz bars, usually found on older wooden coasters. Ever since the early 2000s, roller coaster manufacturers have been using lap bars on more coasters that go upside down, and many people think it's not as safe as the over-the-shoulder harness. Now that you know the two types of roller coaster restraints, let me explain why you can't say one is safer than the other. The first reason is kinda obvious. When you pull down an OSTR restraint on most roller coasters, it sits at your lap. Do you notice that the top part almost never touches your shoulders? Even though it may seem like having something over your shoulders makes you feel safer, both kinds of restraints are basically providing the same amount of support. The second reason has to do with the mechanics behind the restraint. A ratcheting system is an older concept, but still very reliable. This method works by using a cylinder and a pin. Now I'm just going to show my 3D printed model of this to demonstrate. Okay, so now that I set up that tripod, which took me forever, here is my 3D printed model of a ratcheting restraint. So here's my little model of a restraint here. As you can see, this is in its upward position. You pull it down, you can hear that clicking sound. It's all the way down now, and you cannot push it up, as you can see. So let me show you the mechanics behind it. So this is basically what it looks like, a simplified version of what it looks like in an actual roller coaster. So you can see this cylinder right here. Due to the shape of it, you can't turn it this way. I know my model's kind of bad, but you can't turn it that way, yeah. But when it's this way, it slides up and clicks back down. I need to fix that problem, but so you can basically just turn it endlessly this way, but it will stop when you're doing it this way. So therefore, the restraint will not open. And usually a ride's equipped with many of these, but this is it in its unlocked position. It can move freely. Usually the pin is raised upwards so that it can rotate freely, but when it's in the locked position, this is the way it looks. So as I said, a single restraint features more than one of these, which is in case of a failure on one, which is very uncommon. You'll know if a roller coaster uses this method if you hear a clicking sound when you pull the restraint down. Another way to ensure roller coaster safety is the use of hydraulics. This method is a little bit more complex, and it uses hydraulic cylinder and hydraulic fluid. As the restraint is pushed down, the hydraulic fluid is pushed into a check valve, which means the fluid could only flow in one direction. That fluid is moved to the other side of the piston. There is also a spool valve, which can be turned on and off. When the spool valve is closed, the fluid is forced to flow through the check valve. The fluid is flowing in one direction. Therefore, the restraint is not able to be pushed upwards. When it is open, the fluid is able to flow in both directions. You probably get the point now. If you don't, here's a video I got my information from. I'll put it in the description. Go subscribe to Coaster Bot. Those videos are very informative, especially if you're not a coaster enthusiast watching this video. Let me also clarify that a coaster enthusiast is not an occupation. Back on topic here. What I'm saying is that even if a roller coaster goes upside down, it could still use lap bars, because they're just as safe as OSTR restraints. Lap bars give riders a sense of freedom while riding, which as a coaster enthusiast, I love. One other thing that concerns people is the restraint opening in the middle of the ride. I just explained 2 methods that are used to keep the restraints closed during the ride. They are fail-safe, but you're probably wondering why you hear about people falling out of roller coasters. First off, don't let that scare you. These mechanisms are tested by engineers and a whole team of people to make sure that roller coasters are safe. But the reason why these things happen is because usually of a fault by a person. In most cases, it's the rider itself, not following the rules such as height or weight, because if the restraint is not locked all the way in place, like the way it should, then it's not providing enough support to keep the rider in place. Well, that's about all I have for you guys. If you're not a coaster enthusiast and have questions, please leave them down below, and I'll try to answer them to the best I can. If you're a enthusiast and I forgot something or want to say something you want everyone to know now, feel free to leave that down below as well. I hope you learned something new, and remember, be you and keep riding coasters.